Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Story of Somebody. I'm your host, Rachel, and I have another special guest with me this week. I have Kim. I won't put her, well, I have her last name up there, Kim Dobbs. We're live in the same town, and I'm happy to interview her. So we're just going to get it started. And Kim, so how old are you?
27.
27. Have you lived in Elkhart your whole life?
No.
No. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Beach Grove, in Indianapolis. I've been in Indianapolis for my whole life. I moved up to Elkhart about 2 years ago, and I've been here.
Nothing to do here.
It's a lot better. I'm telling you.
Is it a small town?
Yeah.
So let's go to the beginning about like when you were a baby growing up. Tell me about your parents and your home.
Home life was pretty rough at first. I don't remember much as an infant, but just I would say around 4 or 5 is really the best that I can start with.
Right. Well, I know nobody remembers.
Yeah. But I mean, I really just remember my dad just being angry a lot. My parents were together until I was 12, so I was able to actually have them both in the same house. But really, it was just a lot of fighting, arguing, and um, my mom, she was really sick, all throughout my whole life. So
What was wrong with her?
it was a lot, but the main concern was she had diabetes and she didn't take care of it.
Gotcha.
So, if you don't take care of it, then all your organs go, and then at the end, it's just you can't.
Are your parents still alive now?
So my mom died in 2017.
Oh.
And my dad, I don't talk to. Haven't talked to my dad in a few years. And the last time we talked, it was Christmas. And I don't even really want to say that I was talking.
So yeah. Did they ever suffer from like drug addiction problems or alcohol problems or anything like that? Or do you know like how they grew up?
I don't know much about how they grew up. I know my dad had a lot of problems with pain pills. And my mom didn't really suffer with anything up until, I was an early adult. That's whenever she suffered with she became an alcoholic a lot, and started using, meth, and um, I mean, she really just more leaned on the alcohol than anything throughout, my early adult.
So what was elementary school like? Were you ever bullied in school? I mean,
so I've always really been quiet. So, and then,
well, quiet ones are easy targets, right?
Yeah, of course. So it was like I wouldn't dress in a whole bunch of pink. I would be one of those really weird kids who would dress in either all black or neon colors with black. So of course,
that's
easy target though, So it was like, they would make fun of me because I would be in, black clothes, and I'd be quiet and by myself. And of course, it was like,
so stupid.
Exactly.
But the thing about bullies is probably suffering from something too.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. You don't know what their home life is either.
Yeah.
Tell me about middle school. Did you ever have a boyfriend or try drugs or alcohol or lose your virginity?
So that's actually where it all started. So it started about whenever I was 15. I had 3 friends that were really close in the neighborhood. They were all 18. I was 15. But they were really all I had. Because at that time, my mom moved out. My dad, again, still angry, still wants nothing to do with me. So then it was like, I hung out with them all the time, but then when I would come home, I'd get in trouble, I'd get grounded. So then I would act out, I would sneak out, I would stay out all night. And then it was just to the point where I started doing drugs with some of my high school friends. I snorted Vicodin one night, and one and only time that I did that. And that was actually the first time I ever got sexually assaulted was by her brother. So yeah.
So basically, you just felt like you wanted to fit in. You didn't have anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So The only friends that I really had were either the 3 18-year-olds, which, were awesome at the time, or it would be, friends that were my age, but were also doing drugs and all of that. So it was like, well, if this is all I have, okay, go ahead, let me try it.
Mhm.
And then once I tried it, it was like, from there on, it was like, I will never in my life. Like, I hate taking pills just for the simple fact of that one,
Incident.
situation. Exactly.
Traumatized you. That's good, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But, and then throughout high school, that was in freshman year. And then whenever I was a sophomore, I met my oldest son's father. He was more of like the protection kind of person where, anybody who tried to pick on me, he would be right there, because he was one grade above.
But your high school sweetheart, basically. No.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
was your first boyfriend
Yeah.
in high school?
Yeah. And so I remember like one situation, it's so stupid, but like these kids were teasing me, and he was like, you really need to cut it off and stuff. Well, they threw lotion at me, of all things. Yeah, it was lotion. So at that point, it was like, you know, throughout high school, he had a lot of anger issues. He was one of those act out type of kids. I was the quiet one, did my work at school. So opposites. And so he got really angry. They got into a fight. He got teeth knocked out. It was a lot for me.
For sticking up for you?
Yes.
Or
So it was one kid specifically where it was like the four front teeth had gotten completely knocked out. And all I remember from that is like they got into a fight in the hallway, and all I remember is seeing blood on the floor. And at that time, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And all I remember is like the teachers splitting him up, and then him going to the nurse's office. I don't even know where the other kid went. And I went to the nurse's office, and his mom came and picked me and him up. So it was just that
Wow.
situation was just, it was bad.
what you're bullying me for?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess it was
Not
just,
bothering anybody.
yeah. I don't know. I guess it was just a weird kid because I was quiet, but and then we stayed together up until, let's see, I think it was about 2 years at that time we stayed together.
You were still in high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was my sophomore and junior year we stayed together. And then I actually never made it to senior year.
When did you get pregnant with your kid?
So I didn't get pregnant with my oldest until I was 19.
Okay.
So we had actually broken up and gotten back together
Okay.
at, I would say, 18 or so. But at 17, I got emancipated out of my house. My dad no longer wanted me to be there. So I moved in with some guy I met off the internet.
At
Which,
17.
yes.
What site did you use? I'm curious as to like, is it like
I think it was Meet Me, to be honest.
Meet Me? I was gonna say like MySpace or
Yeah,
you know.
I'm pretty sure it was Meet Me.
Yeah.
But he was really into marijuana, so of course I tried it. I have negative effects on, so I get paranoid. I mean, I don't like it.
How many times did you try it? Because they're like common symptoms for people who try it for the first time. Those things like go away after you smoke.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't. I think I tried it like twice, maybe 3 times. And every time it was like, I don't like the feeling of not being in control of my own body. And so like I would feel extremely loopy and dizzy. And at that point I was like, I can feel my heart. Like this is not okay.
It's a new thing, but those symptoms go away. I mean, you build up a tolerance to it. So I mean, after that, you're just like, yeah, basically.
But
And not to tell you to go out and
Oh,
smoke.
no,
I'm
no,
just
no.
saying, like, it's like a first time thing. Because I remember that too. I remember the first time I got high, even get high, like,
really?
one or not working. I don't know what it is, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know what it's supposed to feel like. Because I never tried it before, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
You're fine. But then, so I stayed with that guy for about a year and then got back together with my eldest son's father. We were together maybe another year.
Mhm.
And then I met uh, my other children's father, and that was about
That's in the neighborhood, or the town you grew up in?
yes.
Okay.
And so I met him off of me.
Maybe. Okay.
And so that's really where, like,
Is he older than you?
yes, he is 30,
Okay.
so 3 years different.
What attracted you to him?
His look.
So he was a nice looking guy.
Yeah, he was
The
attractive.
look can be deceiving, right?
Yeah. So we got together. At that time, I was living with my mom and her boyfriend, and so we met at my mom's, and everything hit off well. And we dated for a few months, I would say, and then I would say about the 6 month mark is whenever I moved in with him. And at that time, he was living with another friend, so it was like a shared house kind of thing.
But there was never any red flags before the 6 months, like he didn't yell at you, try to beat you up before that, or wanted you to like control you or anything like that?
And not see from my perspective, like I didn't know red flags.
Right.
I didn't really know what to look out for, so if he was like, oh, what are you doing, I didn't really think of it like a negative thing. It was just kind of like, oh, nonchalant, like, oh, this is what I'm doing. And so it was like, whenever I moved in with him, that's when it started. All of the abuse started. So
Like immediately?
Within the first month. I would say within the first 30 days, definitely, is when it started. So for, I guess, like the first few times that things happened, it was small. So it was like, you can't do this, or you can't do that, or tell me this, basically just trying to start that control. And again, I didn't realize that it was as bad as what it was. And I would say the first year or so, um, is when everything really took a turn. Where it would be, he would do things as far as like, at the time, I didn't have a license. He had a license, so he would be the permanent driver. He would do things as far as taking me out to unfamiliar places. And I don't mean like some town that I don't know where I'm at. I mean like nothing's around.
Middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And he would stop the car, turn the car off, and we would sit there. And he would tell me, I'm not leaving until you stop the way that you're acting. And it would just be something as far as like I didn't like what he was doing, or I didn't like what he was saying. So if he didn't agree and I didn't mend my brain to what he thought, he would do things as far as taking me out of nowhere. And then if even then I would still fight back and we're in the car, um, he would threaten to pour water all over me, and his keyword would be pull off. And so, I that traumatized me so much where I don't like to have water on my head. I don't like to have water on my head.
So have you done that? Have you poured water on you?
Yes. So it has gotten to a point where like I've told him like I'm not going to stop. Like this is how I feel, and you're not going to tell me how to feel. And he would literally throw it in my face, throw it on my head. And whenever that didn't work, it would get even worse. So we would be like, I would have these pair of shorts. I loved them. They had like slits in them, and they were like, to the middle of my thigh. And he would actually rip my jeans, like they were jean shorts. He would rip them off where I had nothing on. And if that wasn't enough, he would rip my clothes. And again, we're in the car in the middle of nowhere. It could be daytime, nighttime. I would have no clothes on by the time he would be done. And at that point, it was like, okay, I'm done. Like I don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
And so
Where's the son while this was going on?
So I had my oldest son up until he was about 8 months old. When I was pregnant with him, I had gotten a mattress thrown on me while I was pregnant, and I mean, just a lot of abuse. At that time, I'm pretty sure there was a time where he actually choked me to the point I passed out while being pregnant. And so I had my son, he was in the NICU for a few weeks, because he didn't gain the ability to be able to breathe and eat at the same time. So they put him on oxygen, sent him home on oxygen. And this was my first C-section. So I couldn't walk, couldn't cough. I mean, nothing's like the first.
Yeah.
So I couldn't really do anything besides take care of me and the baby. And he had gotten mad one time, and actually ripped the plug from me. And so at that point in time, it was like I called my son's dad and I'm like, he just did this. I can't do this. Help me. Come get me. And so they came, or no, I'm sorry. I actually called 911 because after he had done that, and I made sure like the baby was fine, he actually swallowed like a ton of time trying to make the situation about him instead of about, my child. So I called 911 and told them like he just took a whole lot of time off. So they took him for a suicide watch for 72 hours, and I took my son and left. And I went to my son's father's house for, I don't know, a few weeks or so, and I ended up going right back. So my son's father filed for emergency custody, and he gained emergency custody of my son. So now I haven't seen my son since he was, let's say, 5. He's 8 now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's gonna be hard, when you give birth to a kid and then
they're
just taken away.
Yeah.
Well, how long till you get pregnant with the
next one?
Yeah. How long were you guys together before you got pregnant with your second?
So I got pregnant again in 27 with my son, who's 5. And that's actually when the abuse stopped. Not entirely, but I will say that my son was produced from her. So at that time, it was more mental. When my son was born, I vaguely remember times of him grabbing at the back of his clothes. And I remember a lot of times, because we were living with his grandma at the time, screaming, someone help me, he won't stop. And she wouldn't. She would be in, the next room, and she would never come. And I knew from the first time that he did that at her house, I was no longer safe. I knew nobody would come. And that was a reoccurring pattern because we lived by ourselves and lived with family. So we lived with his mom. I remember numerous times. I mean, so many times of screaming to help. And she would never come. And
maybe she was scared of him too. Do you think? Or do you think she just stuck up?
I feel like she enabled. Because even now, with having 2 children, he's still, we still are going to court. This past year, we had 3 protective orders at the exact same time.
They're dangerous.
Yeah. And
has he ever been in jail for abusing?
Yes. So he went to jail. I think it was in 2015. Yeah. So a year after we were together, he actually punched me in my face at his sister's house. Knocked my glasses off my face, and there were marks on the side of my face. I called the cops, and they took pictures, and we went to court for it and everything. And he went to jail for, I don't even want to say it was a year.
So people, this isn't to stick up for this guy, but what do you know about his parents? Like, he had to learn this behavior somewhere. Like, he has a story too. How did he end up abusing her and abuse her and doing all this stuff? Like, he must have saw his parents fighting, or maybe his dad was beating his mom up. Something happened with this guy that he turned out to be this way.
So what I know is his parents weren't together for They were together, I think, up until he was about an infant, maybe young, young child. And so he lived with his mom. I know his mom was heavy on drugs for a long time. She went through a home to basically get her back on track.
Like a drug detox
Yeah,
place?
yeah, basically. So they got her, a job, a home, and everything. And at that time, he was left to fend for himself and his sister. So
He never like told you like he was abused as a kid or
I think he told me that he was abused by a family member, you know, as far as sexually, but as far as physically, I'm not 100% sure he was physically abused. I just know he has had sexual abuse in his life.
And more than likely he never got any counseling for it. Nothing. He's just taking all his anger out on whoever he's with.
Exactly. And I do know for a fact that
I was gonna ask you that. That was my next question.
yeah. So he actually has 2 other children with a lady prior to me that went through it also.
She didn't try to warn you?
I don't want to feel like she did, but
Right.
I feel like nonchalantly, I definitely feel like, she did try because she went through it just as much. I just had to deal with it for 8 years. She had to deal with it for
8 years.
Yeah. It was long. I just left him in 2020.
You have 3 kids by him?
I had 2 kids.
2 kids by him. Okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I don't want to get the story messed
Yeah,
up.
no, you're fine.
So how do you end up here in Elkhart? Have you let me go back? Have you ever done or any help or how do you do for 8 years?
So I tried therapy. I've tried group. Um, I don't know.
How'd you get away?
So I actually think, so I was with him up until I started my job. I actually worked for Walmart for about 2 years.
In the town that you were in?
Yes.
Okay.
And I was still, trying to maintain my life that I could. And I met my husband at work and we became friends for about a year, year and a half. And then we started to talk outside of work. And I really fell hard for him. He was my life. So as far as taking him out of the home that I own, well, rented, and going and getting, protective orders and going to court. I mean, everything. He stood by my side, and that's the reason why I left. Yes,
How
because
did you get this guy out of your house? You had to call the police?
no.
Did you leave your house first? I mean,
So I left my house first for a few days and went to my husband's apartment. And so I was there. Well, the first night I was there by myself. Second night, I actually took my children and left and went to his apartment. We stayed there for 2 days. And then it was about the 4th or 5th day. Myself, my husband, my brother, and my friend that backstory, the 18-year-old that I was friends with at 15, she actually came too with her wife. So all of us basically just came to the house and they said, you have 1 of 2 choices. Either you can leave or we can make you leave. And sure enough, he called his mom and he left.
And that's the thing, he'll beat you up, but I bet he cannot defend himself.
And that's the thing, my husband has actually had hands with him and it didn't end well for him. But my husband finally said, like, enough is enough.
Yeah.
You're not going to, because he would do this thing where he would show up randomly. And we actually had to get security cameras for inside and outside. Because I mean, we've went to court so many times. We've had at least 8 or 9 protective orders. I have like a notebook
For all the instances.
I mean, I probably have at least 200 or 300 pieces of paper just of screenshots and of court papers and records. I mean, everything.
You ever try to kill you besides choking you out? You ever fear for your life besides that? I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
But like, is there ever like a time that
I thought that he would intentionally try to kill me?
Yeah.
Part of me still wants to say no, but honestly, I don't know. I don't know if he ever intentionally did. because he doesn't even know what's true in his own life. So I could sit there. I mean, even now, I've been married for over a year, and he still texts me every other day. I know that you still love me, and I know that we can be a family. And
I
that's
have your phone number.
so he doesn't actually have my phone number. It's just through Facebook.
Oh, okay.
And that's just because I've tried to leave the door open for him to communicate with his children, and he actually doesn't utilize it. If anything, it hurts them more because he doesn't utilize it.
So he's never tried to hurt the kids. Is he a good dad besides being a bad
He's
person?
never physically abused them, but I will say with our oldest, it's definitely mental. So when my son was potty training, because both of my children with him have sensory processing. So like my oldest, he doesn't comprehend everything. So like potty training, for instance, he would be potty training, and then I would be at work, and my son would be like, "Well, I want mommy to come home. Like, I really want mommy." And he would say, "Well, she's at work." Well, my son doesn't understand. So he would start just uncontrollably just cry. And he would actually record my son crying and send it to me at work, basically saying, like, "Look at what you're doing. Like, you're making him cry." And it's like, I'm at work.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? And then back to the potty training. So like when my son would go in his pull-up, um, he would actually slap him and whoop him for going in his pull-up instead of going to the potty. So I remember whenever we were at my husband's apartment, my son he had went in his pull-up, and we couldn't find him in the apartment. And we're like, why? And he was actually hiding in the corner in his closet.
Thinking he was going to get in trouble
because he thought he was going to get hit. Yeah.
You need to cut that guy off. He does not deserve to see his kids or hear from them or anything. Nothing. You should block him. Even if he makes 100 different Facebook accounts to get a hold of you, I mean, it's not safe for the kids. I mean, definitely abusing the kids.
Well, and the way that court is settled right now is, so he's supposed to have supervised visits for like the first month and a half, and then it goes to 6 months of visits in Elkhart County before he even gains the ability to be able to see them without, being close to me. And this was settled like well over a year ago, and he went through 3 supervised visits and doesn't continue to make sense.
He doesn't care. He just wants to ruin your life. Because all he cares about is his full intention. Does he live here in Elkhart too?
No, he actually lives in Indianapolis.
Okay.
So
that's you're not immediately within reach.
Yeah, that's actually the reason why I moved here. Was because he would continuously show up, and it was getting to the point where it was exhausting. And so I finally said, like, enough is enough. And so I made some choices that I didn't agree with, as far as like I got evicted from my house because I didn't pay. But all of this stemmed off of, it's just a house. This is my happiness, this is their happiness. And I will say that we are happier here than if we were there.
Yeah. And besides that, your house can be replaced, but you can't,
Yeah.
So that's what I tell people all the time. I mean, if you're stuck in a domestic violence relationship today, just get the
and the thing is like, I should have known, because like I got abused by my brother for like so long through my childhood years.
Your brother abused you?
Yeah. So I remember, and it's not only me, he also did it to my mom, but I remember a time when he actually like threw my body against a metal door, and my head hit the back. So it dented the door. So like, and then I remember like numerous occasions of him choking me and my mom up against a wall. So it was like, I didn't really have a good start at all. I didn't have that head start where it was like, this is what it's supposed to be. It was just kind of like, okay, this is what it's not supposed to be my whole life.
Well, you got used to abuse. It's something normal in your life.
Yeah.
So, well, tell me what your life is like right now.
A lot better.
Yeah.
So as I've already said, I've been married for over a year with my husband. We've had a rocky start, definitely, but I wouldn't ask for a better person beside me. You know, he's the person who just pushes me through. So I was actually able to become a stay-at-home mom. For my whole life, I've supported myself or my kids.
Yeah.
So I was actually able to be that stay-at-home mom and watch kids grow.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for being able to have that. And then my husband got hurt, so we actually switched roles this time. So now I get to go out and work, and he's with the kids. So it's like, you know, best of both worlds, where it's like we've actually we're trying to figure out the best way that our family can fit together.
Yeah.
So
Your kids like him.
yes.
You know, that's the most important thing.
So my daughter is in love. Oh
Aw.
my goodness, I tell you. You know, and then my son, he's definitely rocky because he was old enough to understand
Mhm.
what his dad did. So he knows his dad, and I'm not saying my daughter doesn't, but my son knows more.
Mhm.
He is able to comprehend, you know, where is my dad? Why doesn't my dad come? My daughter, on the other hand, she was one when she met. So she is now 3, almost 4.
Mhm.
So it's like she knows him more than she knows her actual father.
She probably calls him dad.
Yeah.
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 What about your son?
So at first he called him by his name,
Mhm.
and then he transitioned into that, and then he started seeing his birth father, and his birth father was like, no, can't do that. And I don't entirely agree with it because my stepkids, which are his kids, they can call me whatever they want.
Yeah.
If I'm not, that's fine, but you need to understand you do actually have that birth father. You know, this is who made and so my son was detoured away from calling him that for the longest time, but now he's getting into the part where he's understanding who he becomes. So it's a slow process,
Yeah.
you know, but we're definitely getting there.
That's good. And your story is amazing, and I'm really trying hard not to cry. I feel myself in you because I told you about the stuff. Oh, that's only like a snippet. You know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I hope things work out for you, and you know the kids grow up with your husband.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have my opinion, and
Oh no, I get it.
I just your ex-boyfriend is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve to see the kids.
Yeah, he does
I
not
bet
deserve
he's
them.
going to mentally fuck with them,
I agree.
or maybe try to turn it against you.
I agree with that also.
You know,
I definitely
best.
feel like my kids are definitely better off, and that hurts me to the core
Yeah,
because I didn't have a relationship with my father.
yeah,
But you know, I will say that my birth father didn't care about me, but now I actually have a father figure in my eyes. He's my dad, who walked me down the aisle, who was
Oh, that's
there.
good.
So I was able to have that person who says, this is what a dad's supposed to do. And I really feel like my kids have that now, which they have it early on.
Yeah,
I didn't get that until I was 20.
yeah.
So it was like, you know, I'm thankful for my husband for taking my kids in and saying, this is what is supposed to be. You know,
Your husband knows you have a good heart.
yes.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, you've been through a lot.
Yes.
Oh, that's Kim. God. I'm glad that we can talk and relate to it. You know.
Yeah.
We'll probably
There-
connect. We're
I-
connecting.
I will really always tell people, you know, who go through it, like there's a light.
Yes.
Always a light. And it's a dark path, you know.
Well, I've done my research because of being a domestic violence survivor too, but they say it takes 7 times to leave your
Yes.
abuser before you finally get out. I don't know what type of resources you had here there, but you know, we have the women's shelter here. We have the faith mission here. They'll take
I
families
actually, in my car, I actually have a card that I got that has the domestic violence number and it's in my window. So like if anybody that's probably a bad idea, but like if anybody walks by and sees the card, they'll be able to like write it down or whatever just immediately.
I should do that too. I have a card too that I got from the courthouse. They have
That's where I got it.
I did a little broadcast about like, hey, I found this part in the bathroom of the courthouse, you know, so.
Yep, I put mine straight in my front window, so
That's a good
anybody
idea.
who just walks by or whatever, will just, and it also has like the shelter number and then like the crisis number on it.
That's
So,
a good idea, yeah.
because I don't feel like, I'm not gonna say it wasn't there, but it wasn't an immediate resource for me whenever I was going through everything. So it was like, if I would have saw that, maybe that would have
You would've
changed
called.
something.
Yeah,
So if I can help somebody just by putting a card in my door
yeah,
or in my window, like, I'll definitely.
you'll definitely do it.
Yes.
But you're an advocate now, right?
Yes.
Standing up for women that are,
Exactly.
can't stand up for themselves.
Yes.
So me too. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
People, don't forget Kim's story here, you know, it's a powerful one, and just get up and leave. Just get up and go and take your kids. Forget about your clothes, forget about your material stuff. That stuff can be replaced, but you can't. You can't be replaced. And what happens if you get killed and now your kids are left without you? You can't do that. So just get out. Get out today, right now. It's cold outside. If you want to contact me, you can stay the night at my house. I will be glad to have you at my house so you can figure something out. And I'm sure Kim, if you
100%.
found her on Facebook or whatever, you know, I'm sure she would be a helping hand as well. But anyways, until next time, this is the story of Kim. So take care.